The Legend of Zelda is a huge game. I have absolutely no idea how they managed to fit this all on one NES cartridge. This game isn't just big though, it also takes forever to beat. It took me so long to beat that I ended up recording 9 hours of footage. That's like the length of a modern game. As a result, this video is going to be stupidly long compared to all my other ones. Hope you enjoy it. I've been a fan of the Legend of Zelda series pretty much my entire life. I've been a huge fan of the 3D Zeldas ever since I played Twilight Princess when I was like 5 years old. The Wind Waker HD is probably one of my top 3 favorite video games ever. Breath of the Wild is also very easily in my top 10. So yeah, I consider myself to be a pretty diehard fan of Zelda. But despite that, I somehow managed to never beat the first one, or any of the other 2D Zeldas for that matter. I realized this recently, and I kind of felt like a fake fan. So to remedy that, I decided to play through the entire first game without any walkthrough. It was way harder than I expected it to be, but I had a really good time, and I'm going to tell you all about my experience. As I said before, this game is very, very big. The overworld is made up of 128 screens. I decided not to use a guide or a walkthrough for this playthrough, and because it's very easy to get lost, I decided to draw some maps of my own on notebook paper. I'd never beaten this game before, but I had played it a bunch, so I knew the size and shape of the map. I drew the entire thing on 2 sheets of paper. My map isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it was extremely helpful when I needed to backtrack and for when I needed to note something down. Starting out with the title screen, I think this thing is beautiful. Not only do you immediately get to hear the Zelda theme for the first time, you also get some animation in this title screen, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, it's nothing crazy, it's just the Triforce flashing a little and a waterfall flowing, but still, impressive. If you wait too long at the title screen, you get some plot exposition. You get a basic explanation of the story, and whoever translated this into English was not so great. Many years ago, Prince Darkness Ganon, that's spelled wrong, stole one of the Triforce with power. Princess Zelda had one of the Triforce with wisdom. She divided it into 8. Ah, dang it. Okay, pausing it for a second. She divided it into 8 units to hide it from Ganon before she was captured. Go find the 8 units link to save her. I could complain about how the quotation marks make no sense, or how the word link doesn't seem to be referring to a character, but like a link between the 8 units. But you know what? English is hard. Plus, whoever wrote this is probably in their 70s now, so I would just be wasting my breath complaining about it. Once that's over, you get to look at all of treasures. Anyway, once you actually hit start, you get to a selection screen. This game actually lets you save, and it gives you 3 files. This is made possible through an extra chip in the cartridge with an entire extra battery inside that chip. That seems kind of excessive and expensive when you could just have passwords, but hey, I'm not complaining, this is super convenient. Just from the starting menu, this game is already the most impressive NES game I've reviewed so far. The first Legend of Zelda is a top-down adventure game where you wander around aimlessly looking for dungeons. When you start a new game, and also whenever you die, you end up at the bottom middle of the map. On the first screen of the game, there's a cave with an old man that will give you your sword. You use the sword with your A button, and you use the B button for every other weapon in the game. The sword is very useful. You can obviously hit things with it, but you can also shoot an energy beam if you have full health. And since every enemy in the first few screens of the game dies in one hit, you're going to mow them all down very easily. I decide to go right first, so I end up fighting some Octoroks. They're the first and easiest enemy in the entire game. They do melee damage, and have a ranged attack that you block automatically if you're facing towards it. On the next screen there are a bunch of Tektites, which are jumping spiders, which jump around all over the screen. These guys are really fun to fight because they jump around very quickly and you have to act fast to get them. If you didn't notice already, you get items from killing enemies. Mostly rupees and hearts, but you can also pick up a stopwatch that freezes all the enemies. It's a huge help against the tougher enemies, but against the easy ones it's kinda whatever. I'm using this time of walking around the entire map to note anything weird I find. And the 4 rocks on this screen immediately jumped out to me. Anyway, a few screens later, we run into my arch nemesis, the Zora. This obnoxious jerk in the water is completely unkillable at this point in the game. I mean, I guess it's technically possible since you just need to hit him twice when he comes up next to the beach, but I've never managed to do that. I would like to remind you that I'm actively drawing maps on each screen whenever I move around. And because of the Zora, I can't just stand around and draw a map, and I didn't know that the select screen just pauses the game normally yet. So every time I walked into a new screen, I would pause the game immediately, try to draw it from memory, unpause it, realized I'd drawn it wrong, get shot by a Zora while trying to memorize it again, die, and repeat about 10 times. Speaking of the menu, if you look at it, you'll probably notice that it looks very similar to the Zelda menus today. It shows you all your items and how much of the Triforce you have. It's funny that the menus for these games have barely changed over the decades. Anyway, I make it to the bottom right corner of the map where the beach takes a 90-degree turn. How realistic. Anyway, I keep going, find a shop, buy some bombs, die, and then go back to the beginning again. On the way back, I try bombing those rocks from earlier, and they do nothing. Great. Then I find a heart container out in the open randomly that I can't get to. I died again and decided to give the other way a try this time. I explored the middle area of the map a lot, which is kind of just a big nothing. There's some cool stuff here and there, but most of it is just filler areas with nothing but enemies to fight. After 20 minutes of mapping out the world, I find my first fairy pond. These places have fairies, which immediately fill your health bar. About 10 minutes later, I end up finding my first infinite looping screen of the game. To get past them, you need to know a specific combination of directions, but I don't know it yet, so I just move on the only way I can. After dying a few more times, I end up having enough rupees that I can buy a candle. You can use it to shoot fire, except with the blue one you can only do it once per screen. You can use it to light up dark rooms and dungeons, but you can also use it to burn down stuff. While I'm at the top of the map, I go up into a cave and find an old man who gives me a letter. This actually gets me super excited because I've never found this letter before, and already the process of going through the entire map is paying off. I take note of this very suspicious looking rock, and decide to try burning down this very suspicious looking tree. Surprisingly, I actually find a stairwell, and that takes you to the penultimate dungeon of the game. I'm actually really happy about this because it saved me a ton of time looking for it later. I move on and find some Armo statues, which come alive if you touch them. The first one I touch immediately hurts me, but then it reveals another stairwell. It contains a moblin who gives me 10 rupees for free. Then I find more stairs under an Armos and a moblin who gives me 30. I keep wandering around, find the second dungeon of the game, die, and find an old woman who tells me to meet the old man at the grave. In pretty much the same area, I find an old woman who doesn't say anything to me. I switch my item to the letter, hand it to her, and boom, I open the potion shop. There are two kinds of potions. One of them fills your life bar, and the other fills your life bar twice. I find the third dungeon, another fairy fountain, a shop under an Armos that's selling what appears to be a ring for 250 rupees, and a waterfall whose source is a pond that's guarded by a Lionel. Blue Lionels do 2 points of damage to me at this point, so I very carefully stab him to death and then go into the cave. The old man inside has a white sword, but I can't use it yet. I have no idea how to get it, so I decide to just come back later after every dungeon and see when I can get it. After about an hour and a half of wandering around, I had mapped pretty much the entire world. I noticed that there's a huge part of the map that I just can't get to yet, but I figure that that's just a late game area. I take an educated guess that the place where you're supposed to enter is the infinite screen near the bottom left. One thing that really stuck out to me after I realized I'd been playing for an hour and a half without stopping was that I never got tired of the music. If you couldn't hear it, the Overworld theme is the classic Zelda theme that you all know and love. It was pretty much the only music I heard that entire time, and it never got old. It was written by Koji Kondo, the same guy who did the Mario theme, another piece of music that you'll hear over and over again and not get bored of. Well, shout out to him, because he did great on both those soundtracks. But by now I decided that I'd done enough exploring and that I was finally gonna do the first dungeon. I didn't mention it earlier, but it's very close to the starting area. My general philosophy with Zelda dungeons is not to go through any locked doors until you've found everything in front of them, and I followed it just as usual here. As soon as you enter, the game automatically maps any rooms you've been to. Anyway, I kill the keys in the Stelphos in the left and right rooms and get 2 keys for my troubles. I go through a bunch of really easy rooms and eventually find the compass. The compass marks the location of the Triforce piece in the top left, although it doesn't show on your map in the menu. Bit of a letdown, but what are you gonna do about it? I find an old guy in a room who tells me that Eastmost Peninsula is the secret, whatever that means. They also misspelled peninsula, but whatever. The hints that the NPCs in this game give are helpful pretty much 100% of the time, except for this one. If I had to guess, he's mentioning the heart container that you can get from the raft, or he could just be referring to the Triforce, but I have no idea. The eastern side of the map is mostly just a giant beach. I don't really know what peninsula he's talking about. I find the dungeon map, and again, it only shows in the top left of the screen without appearing in the menu. I eventually found a staircase that was blocked off by a bunch of, blocks, and it leads to an underground area with the bow. On a side note, these underground areas have always stuck out as being really weird to me. Okay, so the stairs are obviously meant to be going up and down vertically, right? But the thing is, it still plays exactly the same as the top-down perspective. Does this mean that this game is technically a side-scroller 2% of the time? Anyway, the bow is completely useless until I buy an arrow, and I'll explain why I didn't do that for a while later. Moving farther into the dungeon, I fight a bunch of enemies with boomerangs, and I'll give you one guess what they dropped. The boomerang is a very weak weapon which can only stun most enemies. As a result, I didn't really use it much this playthrough. The boss of the first dungeon is a unicorn dragon thing called an aquamentus. I didn't go into this with full health, but even without the energy beam, it was super easy. Just walk up and stab him after he shoots fire, and you cannot lose. After the fight, I get a heart container, which works exactly the same as in the later games, it just gives you an extra heart. Then I pick up the first Triforce piece, meaning that I am 11% done with this game, only 8 more dungeons to go. It is at this point where I realized, oh yeah, there's a manual, I should probably read that. You'd think I would have remembered to do this immediately, considering how it went the last time I completely ignored a manual, but I digress. I could honestly make an entire video just on this manual, it's so cool and so in-depth. There are so many cool explanations and illustrations, and the first page even has a map of the entire world. They hid it behind a bunch of exposition so you wouldn't notice, but still, that's really cool. The manual says that all of the dungeons are shaped like different animals or symbols. The first dungeon is an eagle, which, yeah, I see that. It also gives a description for every item in the game, and it turns out that ring that guy was selling for 250 rupees negates half the damage you take. But that's number 2 on my priority list. First I go back to the old man up the waterfall, and guess what? I still can't have the sword. It took me like 20 minutes to get up here as well because I kept dying, so this really annoyed me. Anyway, because I still don't have enough rupees yet, I decide to do the second dungeon, hoping to get the rupees along the way. The second dungeon is a tiny bit harder than the first one, seeing that I actually died here. Whenever you start after dying, the heart containers kind of reveal themselves to be a curse. You always start out with 3 hearts, no matter how much health you have. So unless you go grind some enemies or find a fairy fountain, say goodbye to your energy beam. When you only have 4 or 5 hearts, it's almost unnoticeable though. Just fighting one group of enemies, I had my full life bar pretty much immediately. After a couple minutes I find the dungeon map. This one's supposed to look like a moon, and I think they did a great job with that. After a couple tries on this pretty difficult room, I end up bombing all the enemies and getting a blue boomerang. Then I get another hint from an old man saying that Dodongo dislikes smoke. Dodongo is the Triceratops you have to fight at the end of this dungeon. The hint that he dislikes smoke is a hint to use bombs, which make a ton of smoke when they explode. Put 2 bombs in front of him, and he eats them, they explode, and you're done. Dungeon number 2 complete. It turns out that after the second dungeon, I do indeed have enough rupees to buy the ring. The max number of rupees you can carry is 255, which is kind of funny to me. It reminds me of how Pac-Man's 256th level completely breaks and is unwinnable. I go buy the ring and effectively double my health bar in the process. It also turns the hero's clothes white, which is a little weird, but hey, who cares? I just doubled my health bar. One kind of funny thing about the color change is that it permanently changes everything that uses Link's color palette, meaning the merchant also gets a wardrobe change. One kind of surprising thing that I noticed is that this game actually keeps track of quarter hearts even though it doesn't show. If you're wearing the ring and you get hit by an enemy that does half a heart of damage, you won't be hurt at all, but if you get hit a second time, you will. Now that I effectively have 10 hearts, I decide to try out the old man again, and to my surprise, he actually lets me have it. The white sword does twice the damage as the regular sword, meaning that I just doubled my health and my attack bar in the span of like 10 minutes. This upgrade also means I can finally kill the Zora. This is the happiest moment of my week. You have no idea how long I've wanted revenge on this thing. All those years of shooting at me while being completely invincible are at an end, my old friend. As for why you're able to kill him now, it's because his health resets every time he goes under the water. If you have the normal sword, unless you can hit him twice, you cannot kill him. I've never managed to do that, and believe me, I have tried for a very, very long time before. Luckily, with the white sword, you can just kill him in one hit. Seeing that I'm on an absolute roll right now, I decide to immediately go to the third dungeon. This dungeon introduces the Dark Nut, which is probably the hardest enemy in the game. They have shields, so you can't hit them head on, you have to hit them from the back or the sides. There are several rooms full of them in this dungeon, but seeing that I'm extremely overpowered, I make short work of all of them. After a particularly difficult room with 8 of them, you go underground again and pick up the raft, which you need to get to the 4th dungeon. I also find an old guy who tells me about the white sword, confirming that yes, you were supposed to get it after 2 dungeons. I pick up the dungeon map and, I don't think I'm actually allowed to say what this looks like. I know it's meant to be like a religious symbol in some Eastern religions, but come on. Boss number 3 is a thing called Manhandla, and it lives up to its name because this thing is tough. It has 4 mouths you have to destroy which shoot fireballs. Even with all my armor, I got overconfident and died here. My second attempt goes way smoother, and I end up beating the 3rd dungeon with relatively little difficulty. All of the preparation I did going around the map is paying off in droves. At this point, I've made it farther than I've ever made it in this game. The manual says I can use the raft at docks, so I use it on the only 2 docks I'm aware of. The first one I try on the east takes me to a room with an old man who offers me a potion or a heart container. Yeah, a potion you can buy for 68 rupees, or an item that permanently increases your life and is completely missable if you don't pick it up here. Can you imagine how many unfortunate children accidentally picked the potion? My condolences if any of you poor souls are watching this. After that, I immediately go over to the only other dock I'm aware of, which happens to take me to dungeon number 4. In this dungeon, I finally find some dark rooms, meaning I finally make some money back on that candle investment. Also, there are some enemies that split in 2 once you damage them enough, but here I found out if you do enough damage to them, they won't split. A good example is in this room, where the enemy I hit with the fire from the candle split in 2, but the ones I hit with my sword beams don't. Unfortunately, these jerks, called Vyres, still split into keys when you hit them with the sword. A few rooms later, we get introduced to the like, which I don't like at all. Instead of hitting you, they'll just grab onto you until you kill them. They'll also take away your upgraded shield if you have it, but I never bought it because it was expensive and it didn't help me that much the other times I played the game, so I just didn't bother. It also has bubbles, which are completely invincible, and if they hit you, then you can't use your sword for a few seconds. These things are terrible, and they make the later dungeons really, really annoying. Anyway, I push in a block in this room and go underground once again to get the ladder. The ladder is used to walk over 1 block water gaps. Also, if you turn a corner too early and activate the ladder, then you can get stuck, so be careful of that. Anyway, we fight another Manhandla. This one isn't even the boss, it's just a mini-boss. Lucky for me, it does not respawn after you kill it, and you're immediately rewarded from killing it by meeting another old man who tells you to walk into the waterfall. That's some wise, sage advice if I've ever heard it. Thanks, buddy. I die to a spike trap when I'm really close to the boss. You have an option of respawning at the dungeon, but I chose to respawn at the beginning of the game because there was some stuff I wanted to get now that I had the ladder. I immediately go east and pick up that heart container that had been taunting me since the start of this game. I also just realized from watching the footage that they probably copy and pasted this screen. They both have exactly the same rock formation, and they both have the 2 platforms. I get it, making games is hard, but to put 2 identical screens right next to each other, that's kind of funny. I go back to the dungeon and also find the map, which I had completely missed my first time through. This one's supposed to be a snake, and yeah, that's a snake alright. The boss of the 4th dungeon is a 2-headed dragon called a Gleeok. Once you destroy one of Gleeok's heads, it pops off like the true eye of Cthulhu and fights you on its own. Unfortunately for poor old Gleeok, I'm way too overpowered by now, so he goes down in about 10 seconds. On the way over to the waterfall that the old guy mentioned, I find that suspicious looking rock again and decide to bomb it. Lo and behold, I actually find a cavern, and once I'm inside I get yet another heart container. After that I find some more secret stairs under an Armos, and another hint. Secret is in the tree at the dead end. Well, I hate to break it to you, old man, but I kinda figured that one out on my own. Anyway, I go over to the waterfall where I got the white sword. I walk through it and find an old lady who demands that I pay her before she gives me advice. What makes you so special? Everyone else gives me advice for free. Well, whatever. She tells me to go up the mountain ahead. I'm basically at the top of the map, so there's really only one place I can go up in this area, and that's the infinitely looping area. Sure enough, once I go up 4 times, I break the cycle and end up at dungeon number 5. In the second room of the 5th dungeon, I find this awful new enemy called the Pole's Voice. Even after my upgrades, they still do a full heart of damage when they touch me, and they take 5 hits to kill. The manual says that they're ghosts, which obviously not. Have you seen them? Look at those whiskers, they're obviously jumping mice. Or rabbits, maybe. Do rabbits have whiskers? I have no idea. The manual also says he hates loud noise, which is also incorrect. Kinda. You see, the Famicom's second controller had a microphone built in. So in the Japanese version, you could just scream into that microphone and it would kill the Pole's Voice. The NES does not have a microphone controller, so you can't do that here. But they forgot to edit the mention of loud noise out of the American manual, making this entire thing very confusing. I find an old man who tells me that Dick Dogger hates certain kinds of sound. Oh, I'm sorry, kind of sound. And then I run into a room full of 3 Dodongos. It takes 2 bombs to kill each one, and since you can only carry 8 bombs, you do not have a lot of room for error. I ran out of bombs, so I moved on and found the dungeon map. This one is supposed to be a lizard, which I just don't see even a little bit. Anyway, I got more bombs, but then I missed a couple. Anyway, I get through multiple rooms full of Pole's Voices to Dig Dogger, a giant sea urchin. Sea urchin is one of my least favorite foods, so I'm going to have a good time killing this thing. Unfortunately, I can't kill him since nothing I do damages him at all. Frustrated, I move on and find an old man who tells me secret power is said to be in the arrow. Now, this isn't something about Dig Dogger, since arrows don't work on Dig Dogger. If I had to guess, this is a reference to Ganon, who you have to shoot to kill. I get some more bombs, but then I miss one again. So then I leave to get more bombs, but I end up dying along the way. While I was trying to find a shop with bombs, I accidentally crossed the river into that giant area of the map that I couldn't get to before. I didn't realize until now that that entire area opens up once you have the ladder. I ended up going back with only 4 because I forgot and missed again. So then I end up leaving again. Luckily I remembered to get 8 this time, but then I missed 3 bombs in a row. It turns out that the Gibdos can drop bombs, so I was wasting my time going out and buying more. And at long last, I finally clear the room. And after finding a room full of blue dark nuts, which were actually pretty scary, I go underground once again and emerge in a new part of the dungeon. In that other area, I push another block, go underground again, and pick up the whistle. Oh yeah, and on the way back I found out that you can bomb the walls to get into the area. Meaning that entire ordeal of getting more bombs to kill the Dodongos, that was all pointless. I did that for nothing. I do what any sane person would do in this situation and take out all my rage on the giant sea urchin. As it turns out, the whistle is his weakness. It was pretty easy to figure out with the certain kinds of sound lines design, and with it being the dungeon's main item. He goes down very easily, and I'm over halfway done with this game now. Since I don't have any better ideas, I decide to go over the river again. I find myself in an area with a ton of Armos and almost die. Under one of them I find the power bracelet, which according to the manual lets me push rocks. I went through the long and arduous process of mapping everything out, which was torture. At one point I accidentally pushed a rock out of the way, which led me to a staircase. Beneath that staircase were a bunch of other staircases that all linked up with each other. The power bracelet's real ability is to give you fast travel between 4 places in the world, and it's super useful. Anyway, I keep going from the power bracelet area and end up at dungeon number 6. I go inside, but choose not to explore the dungeon because there's still parts of the map I want to see. I go left and immediately find a huge 6-screen graveyard. I completely ignore a tip I got and decide to leave the grave. I go south and find that infinitely looping area which I thought was supposed to be the entrance to this place. Nearby, I find an old woman in a cave that I had completely forgotten about and find out that she tells you the combination to get past the infinite screen, meaning that the entire northwest section was open from the very start of the game. After dying a whole bunch of times, I decided that I was done exploring and that I was going to try Dungeon 6. This place was pure agony from start to finish. This dungeon introduces the Wizrobe, a teleporting enemy with a projectile attack that does 2 hearts of damage, meaning that they can very easily one-shot you if you haven't upgraded your defense or your health bar. Pretty much every room in this entire dungeon has at least 4 or 5 of them. A few screens later, we're introduced to the blue Wizrobe, who can do everything that the red ones could do, except he can walk around. I inevitably die and start back at the very beginning so I can go buy some potions. It's a good thing I got that letter because I genuinely don't think I could have beaten this dungeon if I didn't get the potions. On the way back, I finally remember that I got a hint about an old man at a grave. I wasn't told which grave it was, and there are 72 of them in this graveyard, so I guess I'm just gonna have to check every single one of them. Every time you touch a tombstone, another ghost spawns, and soon enough your screen will look something like this. I check the next screen, nothing. I check screen number 3, nothing. On the 4th screen, I finally find a tombstone that doesn't spawn a ghost when I touch it. I find a way to push it over, and finally meet this old man at the grave. He's giving away the next upgrade to my sword, the magical sword, which would double my damage. Unfortunately, I can't pick it up yet, even though it would really help me out right now. Does this old guy just not care about Hyrule at all? I need your sword to get stronger, and you won't give it to me because I'm too weak. Are you an idiot? Anyway, I go back to the dungeon and find a 3-headed Gleeok as a mini-boss. I kill him and get the dungeon map, and this one is supposed to look like a dragon, which, again, I do not even slightly see. I keep going and find a room with about 50 Wizrobes and like-likes. I die, of course, and then I die again because I only respawned with 3 hearts. I kept thinking I was going to get all my hearts back along the way, but that doesn't work when there are a million wizards shooting energy beams at you. After going through the long process of stopping at a fairy fountain and restocking on potions, I finally get back to that room. This time I actually managed to kill everything, and finally unlock an underground passageway to a new area of the dungeon. And then I die a minute later. Great. After bombing some walls, I find a new area with another old guy giving a hint. He says there are secrets where fairies don't live, which immediately jumps out to me as a reference to that pond without a fairy. I die again, and again, and again, and again, and again. I've been stuck on this dungeon for an hour by now, and only just now do I realize there's a fast travel point that will take me straight to a fairy fountain. I go back and die again, and after an hour and a half of wandering around aimlessly and dying over and over again, I finally make it to the dungeon boss. It turns out it's Goma, and because I already know her weakness from Ocarina of Time, I shoot her and she dies in 1 hit. I'm so thankful that the game threw me a bone and gave me an easy one after that absolute nightmare of a dungeon. Oh yeah, at some point I got an arrow for my bow. I don't remember when, so I didn't mention it earlier. It's honestly not that useful, because every time you shoot it, it costs a rupee. After that, I decide to go back to the old man at the grave, and what do you know, he actually gives me the sword. Now that the hardest dungeon in the game is over, and I doubled my damage yet again, the rest of the game felt like a cakewalk by comparison. I decide to go back to that pond without a fairy. It takes me a couple minutes, but I eventually figure out you're supposed to blow the whistle. And after I do that, the entrance to dungeon number 7 finally reveals itself. Dungeon number 7 is much easier and smoother than dungeon number 6. I find a Dig Dogger mini-boss who was honestly easier than some of the basic enemies in this game. Then I find an unkillable gorilla which just says grumble grumble to me. Now this guy is considered to be the most cryptic and annoying part of the entire game. There's an item called enemy bait which you can use to distract enemies, but its only other use is to feed this guy so you can get past him. This is probably the only thing that I couldn't have figured out without a walkthrough. However, lucky for me, I already knew what I had to do even before I started this playthrough. You see, being a Zelda fan online, I've heard multiple people complain about this exact part several times over the years. Who would have ever guessed that complaining about something in a video game would actually be productive in some way? The only store I'm aware of in this game that sells the bait is the Armos store. I can understand selling a necessary item for 60 rupees, but this is a one-use item. Why would anyone buy this? Like, you just set it down and boom, that's 60 rupees gone. What are you thinking? Anyway, I hand him the meat and find the dungeon map in the next room over. This one is supposed to be a demon. You know, I'm not really sure what a demon is supposed to look like, so I guess you win this round. After a very, very long time searching, which I don't feel like talking about because nothing happened in that entire time, I found an explodable wall and a stairwell behind it. That stairwell leads to the red candle, meaning that I can finally shoot fire more than once in a room. Then, in one of the very last rooms of the entire dungeon, I get grabbed by a wall master and have to start all over again. I'm very annoyed by this point, so I decide to stop looking for stuff and go straight to the Triforce. The boss is another unicorn dragon. It's really easy. Lucky for me, I already know exactly where the 8th dungeon is, so I go straight to it. I go exactly 2 screens to the left before finding the magic book. Now the magic book is meant to strengthen the magic wand, which I never found, so it was completely useless to me. I keep going and find a Goma who actually takes more than one hit this time. And after I kill her, I find another old guy who tells me that Spectacle Rock is an entrance to death. He's obviously referring to Death Mountain, and since there's only one screen I can think of that still has rocks I haven't bombed yet, I immediately know where to go. After fighting another manhandler, I get the map, and this one is supposed to be a lion. Look, I know I said that I didn't get the others, but I could kind of see them, I guess. With this one though, I genuinely have no idea how anyone was supposed to think this was a lion. Look at it! I find a secret room in the blank space on the map, and then I find a magical key which I can use forever. The key changes the number of keys you have from a number to the letter A, which actually reminds me a lot of all the symbols you get whenever you do the infinite life glitch in the first Super Mario Bros. After a while, I find another old man who tells me that 10th enemy has the bomb. I don't even know where to begin with trying to understand what on earth this means, so I move on to the boss. It's another Gliok, but this time it has 4 heads, ooh. After killing it, I now finally have a complete Triforce. Now that I've beaten every other dungeon, the last one is Death Mountain, so I go to pretty much the only place I think where it could be. I'm not entirely sure why the NPC called this place Spectacle Rock, but I guess it makes sense. These rocks are at the very top of the mountain area, so I'd imagine you would be able to get a very good view in the game world. Or maybe that makes no sense. I don't know, honestly. Either way, I blow it up and make it in. Death Mountain has a completely unique song, which I'm very glad to hear. The normal dungeon song is good, but it gets really grating after a while. I keep going in, and oh, Wizrobes, my favorite, woohoo, great. I decide to start from the beginning so that I can get more potions and also refill my health. But after that, I learned that there was a potion store right next to it, so I didn't bother doing that again. Death Mountain has a ton of scary stuff in it, including these centipede things I'd never seen before. I find another NPC who tells me to go to the next room. Forget the sword guys, this dude is the biggest jerk in the entire game. I just get here and you immediately tell me to leave? What is your problem? I follow his advice and die almost immediately. Thank you, buddy. I go to the potion store, but then I die to the army of Lionels outside it, meaning that I have to go back to the beginning of the game anyway. I love Zelda. When I get back, I find this thing, which appears to be a prototype Scornet Maestro. I will admit this actually looks really cool, and it's impressive that they managed to pull it off without any sprite flickering. It seems like a lot of effort for an enemy that only appears twice in the very last level of the game, but whatever. I find another old guy who tells me that the eyes of the skull have secrets. Oh, I'm sorry, Eyes of Skull has a secret. I'm sorry if this is getting annoying, but the mistranslations of everything these people say will never stop being amusing to me. I bomb another wall and find the dungeon map, and what do you know, it actually does look like a skull this time. I'm impressed. I blow up 2 more walls and end up finding a stairwell. The stairwell takes me to the red ring, which reduces all the damage I take by 75%, which means that I just doubled my health bar again. Next I go for the Eyes of the Skull, and the right one is pretty easy to get to. It's full of Wizrobes, which is just great, but after I kill them, they drop the compass and reveal that whatever I'm supposed to be looking for is in the left eye. Then this guy says Patra has the map. No, I have the map, genius. And then I find another stairwell with the blue arrow inside. Finally, after a very long time of trying to find how to get to the Skull Eye, I end up at the final door before Ganon. Unfortunately, Ganon was really easy. He turns invisible, but he moves around and shoots you in a pattern, which is very easy to follow. All I had to do was just walk around and swing my sword, and he died eventually. After I hit him a couple times, he turned brown. I tried stabbing him, but it didn't work, so I tried shooting him, and then he exploded. And he dropped another Triforce, and that's cool, I guess. Zelda is in the next room, and for some reason you have to walk through fire to get to her. Funny enough, I made it to her on a frame where Link was flashing, so he just ended up being blue and white while he was holding the Triforce up with her. Then the credits roll, and you get an option to start the second quest, which I am not doing for this video. I'm pretty sure that it's already twice as long as my second longest video, so no, I'm good. You know, I feel like people tend to dramatically over-exaggerate how cryptic this game is. Honestly, I think it's easier to figure out than most of the later 3D Zelda games. I will say that making a map was a huge help, though. If I hadn't made any maps, I probably would have spent twice as much time on this game as I did just from backtracking and trying to figure out where to go. Also, starting out with exploring the entire map was a huge help. If you're thorough about noting stuff that you see, it's going to be much easier for you. So yeah, that's the 7th Zelda game I've beaten. If you're wondering where I would rank it compared to the other Zelda games I played, I'd say I liked it more than Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. But I still think it's below Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker, and Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I've played every 3D Zelda except Tears of the Kingdom because I just don't have the time for it. As for the overall ranking, I mean, come on, there's no way it's not taking the top spot. The first Legend of Zelda has the same amount of content as some modern games. Pretty much everything that I love about Zelda is here in some form, even if it is primitive. Honestly, the only part of the game that I didn't like was Dungeon 6, and that was just because it was hard, not because it was unfair. This game feels very similar to Metroid, actually, which is another game I love. This is basically a top-down game that functions like a Metroidvania game. I love Metroidvanias. I love Super Metroid, I love Symphony of the Night, I love Dark Souls, even though that's not really a Metroidvania game. Still though, a lot of my favorite things about that genre are here and accounted for. I personally think that The Legend of Zelda is the best game of the 3rd generation, and I highly doubt that anything is going to topple it. But you know what, I'm only 5% done reviewing all the NES games, so something might surprise me, who knows. Anyway, 10 out of 10, thank you for watching, have a good day, like and subscribe, bye!